Remember that.
Yeah.
Push it under. No, I get it. Perfectly, thank you.
Push it under the piano so you don't. Hey, you want to go?
Yeah, thank you.
Hey.
I never got to do it. Nice to meet you. Helene. Cool. Okay. Yes, yes, I've got an order of service for you. Okay. Just put that up.
Sorry. I don't know. She's like around moving on to the next thing. My husband did no. I do and I don't tell. I think our mask. Yeah, yeah. And besides, I think that's the one. I don't know. Kirsten's back that way.
Is she speak English?
They speak a little, one of them speaks a little, she's really Polish.
Good morning. Are you awake? Okay, I'm not sure I am. I made the mistake of setting my alarm for 7, doing the whole fall back thing, and not the whole spring forward thing. Well, I'm glad to see you here this morning, whether you're here in person or joining us virtually from the comfort of your home, where maybe the alarm didn't matter as much. Thank you for being with us. My name is Reverend Greta Seidohl, and I use she, her pronouns, and I have the honor and privilege of serving here as your assistant minister, alongside Reverend Christopher, your acting senior minister. And it is a wonderful thing. It is good to be together this morning for worship, for contemplation, to just be together. I am grateful to the other folks who helped make our time together here possible. For our readers today, Jean Bailey and Meredith Bradley. And for beautiful music, we've already heard from Jonathan Tuke on the organ. And a little bit later, we'll have Diane McElfish-Helly on the violin, and Margie Peterson on the piano. And of course, our beautiful choir at the leadership of Austin. Thank you all for being here. I want to invite you to take a breath with me. It's been a long week in a long couple of years and a long day to get started. So just take a breath. Let your body be where it is. Let the fullness of yourself come into this space. Maybe your mind is still back in bed, or maybe it's, on what you're having for lunch, but bring it back here. Be here in this space as fully as you can as we enter into worship together. Thank you for being here.
Well, good morning. We have been talking a lot about bringing the whole of ourselves into this church. We have talked about bringing our baggage with us. Don't leave it out in the parking lot or in the other room if you're watching from home, but bringing the whole of ourselves. And that might look like a lot of different things this morning. It might look like bringing in a little extra sleepiness today. It might look like bringing in a little bit of extra cold and frigidness in today. It might look like bringing in some weight, as Reverend Greta Jo named. But whatever that is, take another breath and embrace it as we hear this morning's call to worship that invites the whole of ourselves into this space that we share with one another. Our call to worship this morning comes from Reverend Dan Schultz. Hear these words as they welcome all of you and each of you into this sacred hour. Come, you who are weary with the cares of the world, come. Come, you who holds all of this on your heart, you who are lifted by milestones, by accomplishments and celebrations, come. Come, you who seek learning and insight, come, you who seek growth in spirit, in heart, and in mind, come. Come, you who are in need today, and you who are prepared to give, come. You who love this winter weather, and you who wish it would just go away, and you who overslept this morning, come. Come, you who join us from your living rooms and from your dens or in this sanctuary, come. Who love however you love. Come, who are cisgender, trans, or non-binary, or from whatever gender, or race, or background, or class, or ability. Come into this holy hour and welcome. We are so glad to be with you this morning.
Our first reading comes from minister and poet Lynn Unger, entitled, These Days. I invite you to breathe deeply, quiet your mind as we share this wisdom. Anyone who tells you not to be afraid should have their head examined. Cities are burning, hillsides are burning, and the dumpster fire of our common life is out of control. I wish I could tell you when it was going to get better. I wish I could promise that better was anywhere down this road. I miss dancing. Bodies in something between conversation and flight. I miss singing, the way we trusted the air that moved between us. I miss the casual assumption that everything would be all right in the morning. These days, I am trying to be buoyed by the smallest things. A ripe tomato, a smattering of rain. These days I am trying to remember that songs of lamentation are still songs.
Good morning. Our second reading is one such song of lamentation, and it's entitled Thank You for Pain, written by Aaron Nyquist. And as I read, let the words come from you as much as they come from me. Thank you for pain. I bring you my pain. I bring you my sorrow. I bring you my shame, the threat of tomorrow. I've heard that you're close to the brokenhearted and near to the cries of the poor. Well, prove it. I'm on the floor. I'll wait.
have two pieces for you this morning, both entitled Song. One by John Harbison and one by Andre Previn, both written as gifts of these composers for their violinist wives. The musical language is different, but both are introspective and intimate and tender. These pieces became my favorite works to explore and work on in those long months of the pandemic when nearly all public performance had stopped. I am so delighted this morning to be sharing these two songs with you. This first one is called Song of Solitude.
Curses mingle senseless death and resilient beauty in Ukraine, while waters rise as high as neon signs in Australia. Meanwhile, a hypocrisy of care rings in Somalia's ears as queer children wonder their worth across this nation. Yet neighbors struggle for housing and food in our city. Still, quarrels brew and bubble within these very walls. And broken hearts weigh down the spirits of too many who sit before me. And the world seems run amok with reasons to cry out, to weep. This might be the point where you expect me to offer some heartfelt but hopeful reprieve. That would be my first cultural and personal impulse. But sorry, not sorry, I'm not going to. Instead, I am going to ask you to be present to the fullness of our current reality in a way that we rarely allow ourselves to be. Let's not sweep it under the rug, but also let's not let it flood our house. Let it sit softly in your belly without being a crushing weight on your shoulders. I understand that that is a mighty big ask, but I believe in you. And I'm hopeful that this shared sacred space that we co-create helps make it possible. We are in the midst of the liturgical and spiritual season of Lent. We honored its beginning together in an Ash Wednesday service a few weeks ago. In the Christian tradition, Lent is a season used to reflect on the presence of the divine in our lives and how we might come into better alignment with it. But Lent is also a time to recognize the wilderness in our own lives, the stones that aim to trip us up, placed in our path by adversaries, and how to resist the temptation to succumb to the shadows of ourselves and of the world. So that at the end of 40 days, we might emerge more grounded and more confident in the power that was within us all along, and the power that was beside us, around us, between us all along. A tool for reckoning with the unavoidable complex nature of our lives, brought to the surface by Lent, is lament. Thanks for the demonstration. Lament is a big liturgical word that means different things in different places to different people, but here's what I invite us to take it for today. It is an invitation to hold vigil to the depths and complexities of our lives, to honor our struggles alongside our successes, our pains alongside our gains. Our readings introduced the concept earlier, and some might be familiar with it from other faith traditions. A quick Google search, my favorite way to define a liturgical word, is, quote, a passionate expression of grief or sorrow. Etymologically, it comes from the Latin for lamenta, which means weeping or wailing. Lament takes on a lot of forms: soft tears and loud screams, silent prayers, and shared confessions. But the crucial part in this time is that it is an intentional, dedicated space for that which hurts. which hurts. Because let's be honest, just about every day, each and every single one of us is carrying pain, grief, overwhelm, something that is weighing on our hearts. But we are rarely given the permission to, as Reverend Christopher shared with us a few weeks ago, bring that baggage with us into shared spaces. To not leave it at the door, but carry it in and set it beside us. To be real about that it is there and how it affects us. We aren't often invited to do that because that would break the spell. In a culture like ours that prioritizes positivity-coded self-reliance as a way to pacify us from the demoralizing tactics of individualism wrought by capitalism, the willingness to engage in active and intentional lament is a power and, dare I say, revolutionary act. Because it requires vulnerability. It requires the recognition that not everything is perfect, that beneath that West Michigan nice, there are people whose veins bleed and hearts break. Because it requires that we separate our worth from our ability to meet the standards of the dominant and dominating culture. It requires that we love each other and ourselves in our wholeness. Not just warts and all, but wounds and all, worries and all. When we can hold that complexity within and among ourselves, then the networks that we build and the changes that we undertake will be powered not by our desire to do the right thing or be good people, but by humanity at its fullest. It is not an invitation to be superhuman. It is a requirement to be fully human. Dr. Barbara A. Holmes, a spiritual teacher, activist, writer, and scholar focused on African American spirituality, mysticism, cosmos, and culture, recently released a book that has been sending conversation waves through my clergy circles, entitled Crisis Contemplation: Healing the Wounded Village. She spends a whole section on lament, but here is the introduction. Communal lament is important for several reasons. It wakes us up, and in doing so makes us mindful of the pain of our neighbors who no longer can go about business as usual when the women begin to wail. Their kneeing rattles both marrow and bone. Who can remain in a stupor with all of that yelling? But lament is important for another reason. The collective wail reminds us that we are not alone. The sheer power and resonance of a grief-stricken chorus reminds us that we are beings of quantum potential. We still have agency in every cell of our being, enough to survive even this. Enough to survive even this. Communal lament. You see, we are not wandering the wilderness alone like the story of Jesus in the Bible. Look around you. No, really, do it. Look around you. We are together. Maybe through cables and screens, through masks and distance, but we are together. As the song of lament is the chorus best sung together, as Reverend Lynn Unger reminded us in our reading earlier. Dr. Holmes goes on, quote, Lament is risky business. The reasons that lament is risky are because it challenges power structures, it calls for justice, and it makes demands on our relationships with the powers that be, one another, and God. Once lament is released, it cannot be recalled. Lament is risky business because we never know until the act is done whether or not we have gone too far. Lament allows the pain to escape and stitches us to our neighbors. We are called to weep with those who weep and mourn with those who mourn. Our tears are our prayers when we cannot speak. A baptism of sorts, a salty healing, a sign of our vulnerability and a liturgical response to violence. Lament is a collective response to tyranny and injustice. When we are confronted with the horrors of our violence-laden society, our mindless killing of innocents, we shift from individual sob and solitary whine to collective moans. Oh. I don't know about you, but I could use some of that this week. Dr. Holmes directs our attention to the reason I felt called to preach on lament this Sunday. This Sunday that I promised I would preach about broad-based organizing and Together West Michigan with a call to action. Some of that team are probably wondering what in the world I'm doing. Lament, when done in community, is more than just an expression of sorrow. It is a siren's call to act. It stitches us together with our neighbors and asks us to respond to the injustice they know as our own. It may not be easy or fun or intuitive, but it will be powerful and transformative. And that is the ask before you in these times, my friends. That is the charge before you presented by Together West Michigan. I'll expand on what I mean by that more in a bit, but this community network that I'll talk about, which FSC belongs to, is kicking off a house meeting campaign. And house meetings, at their core, I believe, are an invitation to communal lament. And then to allow that lamentation to empower us, individually and as a community, to shift and cry out as a chorus. Not as a chorus in perfect harmony, trained to calculated pitches, thinking that if we just sing louder or more correctly, suddenly our cries will be heard. But a chorus imperfectly tuned to the key of vulnerability, full of dissonance and minor chords, because it's raw and real and therefore irresistible to listen to. Because, to be clear, lament requires not just the willingness to accept others' vulnerability, to be willing to hear it and hold it for those around us, but to be willing to be vulnerable ourselves in our giving and our receiving. That is what it means to engage in the work, not just of communal lament, but of public lament. To bring vulnerability and all the humanness that comes along with it into the public square. The poet David White, while giving the closing remarks at the On Being gathering in 2018, said, quote, "If you're sincere about the work, about your work, you should not know how to proceed at times. That tells you that you're sincere. You should not know how to get from here to there, and that puts you into a proper relationship with the world. Why? Because then you have to ask for help. You have to make the invitation to the people who will help you create the conversation. which will help you follow that path of vulnerability into the world and give gifts to others along the way. Any real conversation moves along an axis of vulnerability. Without vulnerability, there's no conversation. So what would it look like, actually, to cultivate a robust vulnerability? To stop trying to follow a road where I won't have my heart broken. The only way you can not have your heart broken is not to care. End quote. The religious left, of which this congregation and its members are a part, tend to be a glass half full bunch. Guilty. It's always onward and upward. There's always more hope. Just love everybody. God loves everybody. Love and light, live and learn. It'll all be fine, right? But what we miss in our spiritually coded optimism, or spiritual bypass, is the power and the potency of naming and claiming our pain. Not the pain of others, so that we can come to the rescue. And not believing that good vibes only will save us from the wounds we try to pretend aren't there. But by claiming the pressure points of our lives, not as something to be glossed over, but as an opportunity to engage with the full texture of life. A silky smooth life is only possible within the oppressive myth of perfection. Let us instead run our fingers against ragged surface, knowing that every bump and scrape is proof that we aren't just alive, but we're living. We are living. And in living, we will meet pain as much as pleasure, doubt as much as dance, shadow and sun in equal measure. So the question is not how to avoid the sandpaper parts of life, but instead what we will do with their refining grit. Will we let it isolate us? Convince us that misery is all that is to be had when in relationship? That community, more than capitalism, is doomed to infighting and fragmentation? Or will we let it remind us? Hold us accountable to the deep reality that our rawest vulnerabilities are interconnected. And if that is true, then necessarily are our truest joys as well. Once more from Dr. Holmes. We survive as a people because we collectively nurture one another. We respond to the need and trauma as a village. The village does not require proximity or sameness to respond. It is based on a sense of shared experiences. Belonging matters. Our lives together matter. What would that look like? Better yet, what would that feel like? To invite vulnerability, pain, and doubt to the center. To openly claim our broken hearts and our hurting bodies. And then to care for each other with the tenderness and ferocity that fresh grief requires. But always, and forever, and for everybody. May we make it so. So I said I wasn't going to give you a happy and hopeful reprieve, but I didn't say I wouldn't give you a call to action. So I want to tell you about this team and this organization that is working in our community. Since January 2018, behind the scenes in churches and organizations across the city, dedicated individuals have been working to create what is called a broad-based organizing network here in West Michigan. With the support of the Industrial Areas Foundation, there are now over 20 institutions that are a member of the newly named Together West Michigan. That includes Fountain Street. We cemented our commitment to this organization in December when we took a special offertory plate collection as our membership contribution. I was supposed to preach on it back then, but I got COVID. But members of Fountain Street Church have been working with Together West Michigan for much longer than December. Before I introduce you to our Together West Michigan team and what they're up to next, I want to zoom out for just a second and answer the question we get the most about all of this. What in the world is broad-based organizing? And can you explain it in less than 10 minutes? I don't know. Broad-based organizing uses a power before program framework. It focuses on building a web of relationships between institutions and across lines that traditionally divide. Building power through people, for people, by people, before ever approaching an issue. Why? For all of the reasons I just preached on, I hope you were listening, and a whole lot more. Because people who know each other, people who have had an opportunity to be vulnerable and real with each other, who love each other, are a whole lot more willing to go to bat for each other, whether or not their personal issue has what people are working on, because they are committed to caring for their neighbor in whatever way they can. This power and relational building stage is what Together West Michigan has been up to since January 2018. But we are at the beginning of the next chapter. The chapter when we start to listen and speak with the intention of honoring the pressures that weigh on the members of this community, lifting them up, and then choosing as a larger West Michigan community what we're going to do about it. How we are going to let our collective lament call us to action. This takes the form of something specific, a house meeting campaign. No, they don't have to happen in houses. They will happen in places like churches and coffee shops and businesses and parks and maybe some houses too. House meetings are an opportunity for a group of people to come together and share real, personal stories of the pressures that they are facing in this community. They're not focus groups. If I had $1 for every time I've heard that said in the last couple of months, I don't know, I could do some big things in Grand Rapids. They are not focus groups done by some organization that wants to do something for you. They are not listening circles done by Fountain Street Board that want to hear from you. They are an opportunity to empower you, to empower your neighbor, your friend, you. To claim your own story, to give power to your own lament while helping others to do the same. Together West Michigan kicked off their house meeting campaign last week. Many of the folks who will be up here in just a moment were in attendance. There was a goal of hosting 200 house meetings in the next 2 months with the help of 20 institutions, FSC included. So you're going to hear from these folks a lot in the next 2 months, and so I wanted to introduce them to you. Come on up. Some of them are here in person, some of them are joining us virtually, and some couldn't be here. Yeah, wherever. Come on in. Hi. Our co-leads are Jean Bailey and Linda Jones. And then we have Meredith Bradley, Denise Joseph, Robin Connell, Kathleen Higgins, Tim Kramer. We also have, supporting this effort, Dolly Lutz, John Considine, Penny Barstow, Sharon Raditsky, Carol Townsend, and Carol Steele. See their faces, hear their names. Know that they are a part of your community, the community here at Fountain Street Church, and the larger community of Grand Rapids and West Michigan. Team, I want to thank you. Thank you for your willingness to hold complexity and vulnerability, to seek justice and compassion, to stay humble yet bold, to both speak up and listen deeply. Thank you. That is what they are here to do for you, for the wider community. Our first house meeting is on March 20th, and I hope you'll come. If you can't make it then, there will be plenty more. But before we do that, I want to take an opportunity to bless them. This is hard work. Remember the part where I said Lament was not fun, easy, or intuitive? They're going to keep listening, to keep striving with compassion, to listen, and then to act. So I want to bless you with our love and support as you carry on this good work. And I want your help. I want to ask you, if you are here in person or virtually, to hold a hand up to the screen. If you're here in person, hold a hand up towards them. Just send them some love, some gratitude. And then will you say with me, may you be blessed and be a blessing. 1, 2, 3. May you be blessed and be a blessing. Thank you. And we can't wait to see what lamenting pours forth. Thank you.
thank you. I had this whole meditation that Reverend Greta, Joe, and I discussed that would make the perfect entree into our moment of prayer. But to quote the poet who was quoted earlier, David White, it almost feels disingenuous and insincere right now to pontificate in a prayer about Lent when, like you, I and your other minister carry a lot of lament as well. If you were in my orbit, I should start there this week, you know I had a migraine for 3 days, and I rationalized it as the dust in our home. I rationalized it as seasonal allergies. I rationalized it as not sleeping and cutting sugar out of my diet. But it was a manifested anxiety attack built on a lot of lament that I wasn't bringing into this cathedral for you. One of my laments is that I can't pray with you out there right now, because if I could, I would freely name that I don't know what to do about the COVID policies right now. I don't. There's science, there's the CDC, there's the Michigan Department of Health, there's a governing board, there's staff, there are families, there are complications. And so I carry the weight internally of disappointing someone. I don't know what to do about the Ukraine and Russia situation. And so I stay up an hour past my bedtime reading political commentary on how this could end, to which every article and piece of commentary says, we don't know. I could share with you how my anxiety and my loss and my fear and my mourning is manifesting in ways that affect the people around me. I can't be entirely pleasant to be around all week. I know my husband is struggling with it here and there. I know that some of you probably feel it too. We are living through hard times, and for me to come up here and offer you an exercise and a meditation on how to lament would be insincere. And so for a moment, as our space of prayer today, I want to model as best as I can by saying, I don't know. I don't know what to do, other than to be here with you, with my colleague, with the choir, with this church family at home, and lift up that I don't know. Will you pray with me, please? Spirit of lament, who has surely been with us since the beginning of time, we acknowledge your presence whether we want to or not. We acknowledge that even though it might feel easier to ignore you in the corner of the room, to ignore your nagging spirit just over our shoulder, to ignore you as we try to focus on the good stuff and the positivity, you are there. And so this morning, help me welcome you simply by saying, I don't know. I don't know how this is going to go, Spirit. I don't know what to do at all times. I don't know how to do better, even though I know I need to. Be with us and give us the courage, even in the discomfort, to lament to welcome your presence among us and to hold the faith that together we will be better for it. May we recognize that we might not be able to change the course of things in Europe or Africa or Australia or Texas or Florida or Grand Rapids streets or even this church. We can start within ourselves and share it freely with one another. Let there be peace and lament and love on earth, and let it begin with me. Amen.
I moved spots on tech. My bad. Can you hear me? How about now? Yeah. Oh! I moved spots on tech. It was my fault. Thank you, choir. I will admit that when I saw that you had picked "Surely He Has Borne My Griefs" from Handel's Messiah, I was like, what in the world are we going to do with that? It all worked out all right. Before we go on our way back into the larger community, I have a few brief announcements. They were given to me. The nominating group is looking for candidates for the Senior Minister Search Committee. This is a critically important part of the future of this church. We need to present a slate of 14 to the congregation, for the congregation to select 9 elected members to the Senior Search Committee. There is a description of the work in the Friday Flash, as well as on the welcome table in the narthex, and there is a form that can be filled out online. There are also copies of that available on the table as well. If you think you would like to be part of this process, please fill out the form and return it to the office by March 18th. Today is the 13th. So that gives you 4 or 5 days? If you know someone who might be a good fit, also feel free to let the members of the nominating group know. The nominating group is made up of Monica Stegman, Sue Chappell, Katie Mitchell, Jeff Kempter, Shelley Jeffries, and Tim Creamer. If you have any questions, please ask one of them or email Tim. His email is in the Friday Flash. The University of Dayton, Ohio Chorale will be forming here in the sanctuary at 7:30 p.m. this coming Monday the 14th. That's tomorrow. They're a group of about 25 singers who perform sacred and secular music and have toured the US and Europe, presumably with different student lineups, but who knows? The concert is free and no tickets are required. So show up, bring your friends, bring your neighbors, and hear some beautiful choral music. 7:30 p.m. It's in the Friday Flash, too. It's all in the Friday Flash. I'll give one more shout out that our first house meeting hosted here at Fountain Street Church will be next Sunday, March 20th, directly following service. There will be more information coming on our Together West Michigan team this week. They will also be in the narthex and around if you have questions about Together West Michigan, their work, and what that means at Fountain Street. I encourage you to engage. Friends, there is a hell of a lot of hell happening in the world right now. I'm sorry. I don't have solutions. I don't have a pithy quip to send you into the week with a little bit more hope. But I know that there's really only one solution ever, and that is to love the hell out of this world. So show up with more love this week. Whether that love comes in the form of hugs, of a quick text to someone you haven't connected with in a while, whether that comes in the form of loving yourself enough to cry, to let it be real and hard. Let's love the hell out of the world this week, or at least push it back a little further until we come together again. And when we come together again, remember, all of you is welcome. All of you. Your broken hearts, your weighted spirits, your joyful smiles, and your unrelenting tears. Bring it all. It is the only way we will get through it. I love you. See you next week.